Imagine walking through some of Canada's biggest cities, only to discover that thousands of people are living on the streets, right in the heart of some of the world's wealthiest neighborhoods. Did you know that on any given night, over 35,000 people in Canada are homeless? Shockingly, in some cities, the homeless population has jumped by over 40% in just the past few years. What's driving this sudden surge? Could your city be next? Today, we're uncovering the top 10 cities facing the highest homelessness crisis in 2024. And trust me, some of these names might surprise you. From sprawling tent cities to overcrowded shelters, this problem is spiraling out of control. But here's the kicker. Some cities are actually fighting back with unexpected solutions. Which ones? And are they enough to turn the tide? Stay with us as we break down the facts, reveal the hardest hit areas, and dive deep into the real stories behind the numbers. You won't want to miss which city tops the list and the drastic measures they're considering to solve the problem before it's too late. Number 10. Hamilton, Ontario. Kicking off our list at number 10 is Hamilton, a city that has seen a shocking rise in homelessness over the past few years. What used to be a relatively affordable area has transformed into a hotbed of housing insecurity, leaving many residents without a roof over their head. The cost of rent has skyrocketed, making it nearly impossible for low-income individuals and families to keep up. Combine that with job instability and a shortage of social housing, and Hamilton's homeless population has swelled beyond what local services can handle. As of 2024, Hamilton is home to over 1,500 people experiencing homelessness, and this number is steadily climbing. The city's shelter system is overwhelmed, and many people have turned to tent encampments scattered across parks and public spaces just to survive. What's particularly alarming is how fast this crisis has developed, with affordable housing becoming scarcer each year. But Hamilton isn't just sitting back. There are some community-led efforts underway to tackle the issue, including expanding emergency shelters and supportive housing programs. Yet many are asking, is this enough to make a real difference, or will the problem continue to spiral out of control? Stick with us as we move up the list and reveal which cities are in even deeper trouble. Number 9. Winnipeg, Manitoba. Coming in at number 9 is Winnipeg, a city grappling with a homelessness crisis that has deepened in recent years. As of 2024, an estimated 1,500 people in Winnipeg are experiencing homelessness. But here's the alarming part. Many experts believe that number is actually underreported, with a large portion of Winnipeg's homeless population being hidden homeless. These are people couch surfing or staying temporarily with friends and family, never making it to shelters or the streets. The situation in Winnipeg is uniquely tied to both economic factors and the city's harsh winters. The extreme cold poses life-threatening risks for people living on the streets, making shelter beds and warming centers essential. Yet, the number of available spots simply isn't enough to meet the growing demand. Indigenous communities, who make up a significant portion of Winnipeg's homeless population, face even greater challenges due to systemic inequalities and the ongoing effects of colonization. What's behind this surge? Winnipeg's housing costs have risen significantly, pushing low-income residents to the brink. Coupled with high unemployment rates and the mental health crisis, the city is struggling to provide adequate services to combat this. Local authorities and community groups are working tirelessly to create more affordable housing, improve mental health services, and provide better emergency accommodations during the winter months. However, with resources stretched thin, many worry that these efforts won't be enough to turn the tide. Number 8. Ottawa, Ontario. Sliding into number 8 is Ottawa, Canada's capital city, where the homelessness crisis is becoming increasingly visible. As of 2024, Ottawa is home to more than 1,000 homeless individuals, and that number is likely even higher when accounting for the hidden homeless population. Like many other cities, Ottawa's growing crisis is linked to a lack of affordable housing and rising rent prices. The gap between income levels and housing costs has widened dramatically, pushing more people into homelessness. But Ottawa faces a unique challenge. As the nation's capital, it's not just a hub for politicians and tourists, but also a destination for refugees and asylum seekers. Many of Ottawa's homeless shelters are overwhelmed, with beds often occupied by people fleeing conflict and seeking a better life. This adds another layer of complexity to the already strained system. Despite the city's struggles, Ottawa has made efforts to address the crisis. Initiatives like the Housing First program aim to provide permanent, stable housing to those in need, with the goal of breaking the cycle of chronic homelessness. However, these programs are often outpaced by the rising number of people needing assistance. The situation has also sparked debates about the role of government funding and how much should be allocated to help the homeless population versus other priorities. Number 7. Halifax, Nova Scotia. At number 7, we head to the East Coast, Halifax, where the homelessness crisis has exploded over the past few years. Once a relatively affordable city, Halifax now faces skyrocketing rent prices and a severe shortage of affordable housing. As of 2024, the city's homeless population has surpassed 1,000 individuals, up from just a few hundred in previous years. What makes Halifax's situation particularly dire is the extreme weather conditions. With harsh winters, many of the city's homeless are forced into unsafe living situations, including makeshift tents or overcrowded shelters. Unfortunately, the city's resources haven't kept pace with the rising demand. Shelters are regularly filled to capacity, leaving many without a safe place to sleep, especially during the coldest months. The problem is further compounded by economic inequality and a growing influx of people moving to the city, which has driven up housing costs. Indigenous communities and those with mental health challenges are disproportionately represented among the homeless population, highlighting the intersectional nature of the crisis. In response, Halifax has made efforts to increase the number of emergency shelters and temporary housing options. The local government has also been working with nonprofits to develop more affordable housing units. But these measures have struggled to keep up with the growing need. The city faces a critical challenge. If affordable housing options aren't rapidly expanded, the situation is likely to worsen in the coming years. Number 6. Edmonton, Alberta. At number 6, we find Edmonton, a city that has been grappling with a rapidly worsening homeless crisis. As of 2024, nearly 3,000 people are homeless in Edmonton, and many experts believe that number is still growing. The situation here is particularly concerning due to the city's harsh winters, making homelessness not only a social issue but a life-threatening one. What makes Edmonton's homelessness crisis unique is its deep connection to economic instability. Alberta has faced significant economic downturns in recent years, with job losses in sectors like oil and gas driving many families to the brink of poverty. The rising cost of living, coupled with insufficient affordable housing options, has left thousands of Edmontonians without a place to call home. In response, Edmonton has made strides to combat the problem. The city has implemented Housing First, a well-regarded initiative aimed at providing permanent housing to the chronically homeless. Additionally, various community organizations are working to create more affordable housing options and expand support services for those dealing with mental health issues or addiction, which are significant contributors to homelessness in the city. However, even with these efforts, the pace of change hasn't been fast enough to outmatch the growing crisis. Shelters remain overcrowded and the city is struggling to create enough housing units to meet the demand. Number 5. Calgary, Alberta. At number 5, we move to Calgary, a city facing an intense homelessness crisis that reflects the broader economic challenges of Alberta. As of 2024, Calgary is home to over 3,000 individuals experiencing homelessness, a number that has been steadily increasing as housing prices soar and economic pressures mount. The boom and bust nature of Alberta's economy has played a significant role, with downturns in the oil industry leaving many residents without stable employment. Calgary's growing homelessness problem is also tied to its housing market, where rising rents and a lack of affordable housing have forced many low-income families out of their homes. Even with the city's ongoing efforts to build more supportive housing, the demand far outpaces the supply. Indigenous communities are disproportionately affected, making up a large segment of Calgary's homeless population, and further highlighting systemic inequalities. One of the city's key strategies has been the Housing First program, which prioritizes providing individuals with stable housing before tackling other issues like mental health or substance abuse. While this approach has seen some success, the crisis continues to outstrip the available resources. Emergency shelters remain packed, and many individuals are left to fend for themselves on the streets or in makeshift camps. Number 4, Victoria, British Columbia. At number 4, we find Victoria, the capital of British Columbia, where homelessness is reaching critical levels. As of 2024, over 1,500 individuals are experiencing homelessness in the Greater Victoria area. For a city with a relatively small population compared to larger urban centers, this number is alarming and highlights just how severe the housing crisis has become. Victoria's homelessness problem is largely driven by the skyrocketing cost of living. Housing prices have surged, making it one of the least affordable cities in Canada. Many long-term residents, particularly those with lower incomes, have been priced out of the market entirely. The situation is even more dire for Indigenous communities, who are disproportionately represented among Victoria's homeless population. The city has seen a sharp rise in tent encampments, particularly in public parks, as individuals are left with no other option. While local authorities have taken steps to clear these encampments, this often just displaces people without addressing the root cause, the lack of affordable housing. Emergency shelters are constantly at capacity, and waiting lists for supportive housing are growing longer by the day. Victoria is making efforts to respond to this crisis. The local government, in partnership with nonprofits, is working on expanding the availability of supportive housing and increasing funding for mental health and addiction services. However, with housing costs continuing to rise, the city faces an uphill battle in solving its homelessness problem. Number 3. Montreal, Quebec. Taking the third spot is Montreal, a city facing a homelessness crisis that has grown rapidly in recent years. As of 2024, Montreal's homeless population has surged to over 4,690 individuals, marking a 33% increase since 2018. This rise is partly due to Montreal's booming rental market, where increasing demand for housing has driven rents beyond the reach of many low-income residents. What sets Montreal apart is the high visibility of homelessness, particularly in downtown areas. The city's shelters are struggling to keep up with demand, and many people are left to sleep on the streets or in temporary encampments. Winter presents an even greater challenge, as Montreal's harsh weather makes living outdoors not just difficult, but life-threatening. Despite the city's efforts to provide emergency shelters, the growing number of homeless individuals has far outpaced available resources. A large portion of Montreal's homeless population includes Indigenous peoples and those facing mental health issues or addiction, highlighting the complex, interconnected causes of homelessness in the city. Additionally, asylum seekers and refugees have increasingly turned to Montreal's already overburdened shelter system, further compounding the crisis. To combat these challenges, Montreal has been investing in housing programs, including supportive housing and mental health services. However, much like other cities on this list, the availability of affordable housing has not kept pace with the demand, leaving many vulnerable individuals without permanent solutions. Number 2. Vancouver, British Columbia. At number 2, Vancouver stands as one of the cities facing the most severe homelessness crisis in Canada. With over 4,800 individuals experiencing homelessness in 2024, the situation has become a glaring humanitarian issue. Vancouver's housing market is among the most expensive in the world, leaving many low-income residents priced out and pushing them onto the streets or into precarious living situations. The problem is particularly concentrated in the city's downtown east side, a neighborhood notorious for its visible homelessness, drug use, and mental health struggles. Despite various government interventions, including shelters and supportive housing projects, these initiatives have struggled to meet the demand. Encampments have become increasingly common in public spaces as many people have no other option for shelter. What makes Vancouver's crisis even more complex is its high proportion of Indigenous individuals among the homeless population, around 33%, which underscores the deep-rooted issues of systemic inequality and historical injustices. Adding to the challenge is the city's mild climate, which draws unhoused individuals from colder parts of the country, putting further strain on the already overwhelmed shelter system. In response, Vancouver has initiated programs like the Modular Housing Initiative to provide temporary, low-cost housing, as well as expanding mental health and addiction services. However, the affordability crisis remains a massive hurdle, and experts warn that unless drastic action is taken, Vancouver's homeless population will continue to grow. Number 1. Toronto, Ontario. At the top of the list, Toronto claims the number 1 spot for the highest homelessness crisis in Canada. As of 2024, over 10,000 people are experiencing homelessness in Toronto on any given night, making it the city with the largest homeless population in the country. The scale of the crisis is staggering, and the factors driving it are as complex as they are widespread. Toronto's booming real estate market has led to exorbitant housing costs, making it nearly impossible for low-income residents to find affordable accommodations. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the city is now out of reach for many, pushing thousands into homelessness. Shelters are overwhelmed, often running at or above capacity, leaving many people to seek refuge in parks or encampments across the city. A significant portion of Toronto's homeless population also struggles with mental health issues and addiction, further complicating their path to stable housing. Indigenous peoples, refugees, and asylum seekers are particularly vulnerable, with systemic barriers limiting their access to the housing and services they need. Despite these overwhelming numbers, Toronto has been making efforts to address the crisis. Programs like Housing to aim to provide more affordable housing, and the city is working on expanding mental health services and addiction support. However, the demand continues to outpace the supply, and with rent prices continuing to climb, many fear that the crisis will only worsen. So, which city surprised you the most? Before you go, we've got something even more intriguing for you. Canada's most hated cities. Ever wonder which cities people dislike the most and why? Click here to find out. You won't believe which ones made the list. And if you're enjoying these deep dives into the issues facing our cities, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a video. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.